Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. It's wild to think about, but without its internal structures, a single cell in your body would literally be as chaotic as a major city completely stripped of its infrastructure. Just total gridlock. Today, we're taking a microscopic journey to map out the tiny organs, called organelles, that actually make our cells work with incredible efficiency. We're going to explore exactly how these specialized structures act as a bustling metropolis to keep our cells, and ultimately us, alive and kicking. Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start by mapping the cellular city infrastructure, then we'll check out the energy powerhouses, track the protein production line, compare plant versus animal cells, and finally, help you master your exam questions. Let's build this cellular city from the ground up.
Section 1. The cellular city infrastructure. Before we can really understand the specialized buildings in our city, we've got to lay down the physical foundation. Cells are absolutely the fundamental building blocks of life. It's kind of like looking at individual bricks meticulously stacked together to construct a massive skyscraper.
Like the saying goes, a cell without organelles is a city without infrastructure. And why does this actually matter? Well, just imagine trying to run a sprawling metropolis with absolutely zero power plants, no waste disposal, and zero transport systems. It would collapse instantly, right? That is exactly what a cell would be without its organelles. We rely entirely on these microscopic structures to maintain the precise balance we need to stay alive.
So let's establish our baseline terminology here, protoplasm. It's defined simply as the living material of a cell. Before we break down the individual organelles, we just have to recognize that everything we're about to look at sits right within this living matrix. Let's visually map the three core components of this protoplasm. First up, the cell membrane. Notice that highlighted outer ring? That acts as our selective security gate, actively controlling the exact flow of what enters and exits the cell. Next is the cytoplasm, which you see shaded here as the city ground holding all our organelles in place. And then, right in the center, we have the nucleus, basically operating as City Hall. Moving right along to Section 2, the energy powerhouses. Our cellular city has its borders and its ground, but to actually run its daily activities, it desperately needs a reliable source of power. Enter the mitochondria. Now, what's really interesting about this, when you zoom right in on its internal structure, you can see exactly why it's universally known as the powerhouse of the cell. These are literally the dedicated power plants of our microscopic city. Without them, every single cellular operation would just grind to an absolute halt. Watch how this works. Notice how the inputs on the left, glucose and oxygen, flow directly into the mitochondria. Through a mechanical process called cellular respiration, these inputs are completely converted into pure energy. This chemical energy output is quite literally the electricity powering every single cellular activity happening inside you right this second.
Section 3, the protein production line. Now that we've got the power grid online, it's time to fire up the manufacturing and shipping district of our microscopic city. Proteins are totally essential for cell structure and function, so they need a highly organized supply chain.
Let's actually track this supply chain step by step. We start at the rough endoplasmic reticulum, or RER. Think of this as our primary factory where proteins are physically synthesized. Next up, the proteins move to step 2, the Golgi apparatus. This acts exactly like a post office, actively modifying and packaging proteins into tiny little parcels. And finally, the third step carries these packaged proteins out for final delivery to their specific destinations, whether that's within or even outside the cell. And that brings us to Section 4, plant versus animal cells. Up until now, we've been looking at infrastructure found in almost all cells. But just like a coastal city has different infrastructure than, say, a mountain town, different types of cells have highly specialized organelles. Pay really close attention to the distinct differences here, because confusing these two is a massive exam pitfall. On the left, we've got mitochondria, which perform cellular respiration, basically burning fuel for energy. But on the right, we have chloroplasts. These contain the green pigment chlorophyll and are totally exclusive to plant cells. Their job isn't to burn fuel, their job is to actually create it through a process called photosynthesis. Take a look at the flow of photosynthesis within the chloroplast. That incoming arrow represents light energy from the sun. The chloroplast acts basically like a solar panel, capturing this light and converting it, if you follow the arrow to the right, into chemical energy. And the output? Glucose and oxygen. This process is absolutely vital for plant life, and indirectly, it's what creates the oxygen and food that we humans need to survive. So, the crucial point here is that not all cells are identical. Plant cells, shown over on the left, require chloroplasts to make food and a rigid cell wall for structural support. Animal cells on the right have no chloroplasts and no cell wall. Why? Well, because animals consume their food rather than making it with sunlight, and we have skeletons instead of relying on cellular walls for support. Makes sense, right? Section 5. Mastering your exam. Now that we've mapped out the physical layout, the vectors, and the supply chains of our cellular city, let's shift gears a bit. We're going to apply this exact visual map to some real-world exam questions, just to make sure you can perfectly extract this info and score maximum marks. All right, here is a classic high-frequency exam question. Explain why cells are said to be the building blocks of life. I want you to just pause for a second. Picture the literal building blocks we discussed earlier and mentally formulate your own answer before we break it down. Okay, to get full marks on this, your answer needs to hit these exact structural bullet points. First, explicitly state that they are the smallest units capable of performing all life processes. Then, you've got to give the 3 explicit examples. They grow, they metabolize, and they reproduce. Finally, wrap it up by stating that because of these abilities, they form the physical foundation of all living organisms.
Let's try another one and test your active recall on our absolute baseline concept. Name the 3 parts that make up the protoplasm of a cell. Try to think back to that very first city map we drew, with the borders, the ground, and City Hall.
And this brilliantly illustrates how visual memory helps you ace tests. The answers are the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. And hey, if you add a quick note that these components are essential for maintaining the cell's structure and function, you're demonstrating a really deep, macro-level understanding to your examiner. So, let's do a rapid-fire recap of our complete systems map. Cells are the basic units of life. The protoplasm consists of the membrane, cytoplasm, and nucleus. Energy is handled by mitochondria in all cells and by chloroplasts exclusively in plant cells. The RER and Golgi apparatus function as the chronological supply chain for protein synthesis and transport. And finally, plant and animal cells differ distinctly based on their biological functions. When you sit down for your test, seriously, just close your eyes and remember this microscopic city we built today. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. If your entire body is the ultimate biological city, constructed of trillions of these tiny working metropolises, how well is your cellular infrastructure running today? Stay incredibly curious about the biologic happening beneath your skin every single second. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep asking those great questions, and I'll see you next time.